Good evening and welcome to A Deadly Silence. I'm your host, Larry Curtis, and it's the goal of all of us affiliated with our program to bring you current and educational information associated with the drug and alcohol epidemic, not only here in the city of Brockton, but throughout many of our South Shore communities. This evening, we are pleased to have with us a special guest, Judith Austin. Judith is a psychiatric nurse practitioner specializing in addictions and is currently a renowned playwright. Judith, welcome to A Deadly Silence.
Thank you so much. I'm thrilled to be here.
So let's start off first in your background in addiction. So how did you become involved in healthcare and then ultimately gravitate into addiction?
Well, it's funny because I've kind of come full circle with this because I have, from back in the day, I won't disclose the dates,
All right.
a degree in theater.
Okay.
That was my first degree.
Emerson College?
No. UMass Boston.
Oh, UMass Boston.
UMass Boston, yep. And I was working as a local actor and waitressing and bartending and thinking, wow, I'd like to do something that I'm really interested in doing that also provides some financial stability for me rather than just doing a play here and there and waitressing, which is nothing wrong with it, but when you get a little bit older, it gets a little tiresome. So I decided to go back to nursing school, or go to nursing school, actually. But since I had already had a degree in another field, I went into a nursing program that was geared for people that have a degree in another field. So you use that degree towards the ultimate goal, which is the Master's of Nursing, nurse practitioner. So I went through nursing school, went to grad school, became a nurse practitioner, and as a psych nurse practitioner, you have to do various clinicals, various rotations. And one of the rotations that I had was working with a phenomenal nurse practitioner that I'm still very good friends with now at a detox and working with patients with substance use disorder. So I really got a tremendous feel for that field. And then when I graduated, I got a job in that field at that same place.
All right.
And I've kind of been off and running with that ever since. I took a little hiatus and worked with geriatric community, my love. But then I went back into addictions soon thereafter.
So that's how it all came to be.
It is.
You know.
Yeah,
And,
that's it in a nutshell.
Yeah. As a psychiatric nurse practitioner, what do you see is happening out there with that patient population? I mean, we hear about there's the substance abuse aspect, but there's also the mental health component tied into it. So
that's
happening?
exactly right. It's kind of difficult to say because there's such a disconnect, I feel, within the two fields, because oftentimes, as we know, substance use disorder stems from potentially an untreated mental illness, or substance use disorder or mental illness creates one. It's kind of it can be a cycle. And I feel that we're making progress in terms of melding the two treatment-wise, but there's still a little bit of a disconnect.
So from a clinical point of view, there's two different roads being traveled.
Correct.
And we're trying to merge into one highway.
Yes, yes.
You know, so that clinically, you're not just treating the substance disorder, you're treating the mental health and the substance disorder
That's
together.
exactly right.
Okay.
That's exactly right.
That's good
and
to
it's
hear.
difficult. It is.
Well, there's the stigma with the addiction side.
Correct.
That is huge, even today in society.
Yes.
You know, there's still a huge stigma there.
As well as mental health. A lot of people don't want to admit that they've struggled with depression, they've struggled with anxiety, or they have, a mental health issue that's problematic for them. And subsequently, because of that, they may self-medicate.
Okay.
And it's the sort of the need to pull that back, to look at what's happening in order to avoid that result. And it's a fascinating field, and I love working with both. Both aspects of it.
Okay. Do you see at the patient population that you would be coming in contact with, Is it mostly generational, younger, middle-aged, older, or is it just spread throughout the...
You know, there does tend to be an age demographic with my patients, and it also depends, believe it or not, on the substance that they may be using. There tends to be sort of different demographics for different substances. My patients who are addicted to opiates tend to be a bit younger. My patients who are dealing with alcohol issues tend to be a little bit older. I think it's accessibility and familiarity that creates those demographics. Because opiates, when I was younger, and of that generation, they weren't around like they are now.
Oh, absolutely.
So
Right.
that tended not to be the substance of choice that people went for.
So when we focus specifically on the opioids as an example, are we finding that a majority of the patient population may have gotten hooked through prescription medications or through recreational choice, as I like to say?
Well, I sort of do my own informal surveys with my patients, trying to get an appropriate history and physical, finding out the where it stemmed from, where their substance use disorder stemmed from. Obviously, as a provider, you have to do that. But I've noticed that it's mostly prescription drugs that kids have gotten into when they were younger. That
Whether
had
it may have been
progressed.
prescribed for a sports injury or wisdom teeth.
Or for somebody else. Or for somebody
So they've gone
else.
medicine cabinet shopping.
Correct.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so-
I have found that. I do have a lot of patients that it started with a sports injury, and it's unfortunate because, as we know now, the prescribing has been very tightened. It's been tightened up.
Correct.
But that's fairly recent. So before that, if somebody got injured, here's 90 OxyContin, here's 90 more, 90 more, 90 more, and then all of a sudden,
three refills.
Exactly. And then all of a sudden, oh no, there's an issue out there. There's an opiate crisis brewing. I'm just going to stop you now without any plan
Cold
of
turkey.
Right. And it's befuddling.
Yeah.
It's amazing, especially when you look back in recent histories, the 90s and on.
From a clinical point of view, the steps that have been taken in the last maybe 3 to 5 years here in the Commonwealth, do you think they've been more positive in helping to curtail the opioid epidemic in relationship to, minimal amounts of prescriptions being given when brought into the ER, required follow-up, the physician's list they have to check on to make sure somebody's not chopping around.
Prescription drug monitoring.
Prescription drug monitoring, thank you.
That's made a big difference.
Okay.
I think that's really made a big difference. I do feel in the past 3 to 5 years there's been a significant shift in treatment and care. We're getting more vigilant with what's happening. We're trying to curtail anything that's spinning out of control. We're trying to get patients, we're trying to meet them where they're at, essentially, and working with them to try to get progress made and try to get some treatment in place, whether or not it's abstinence, AA, NA, whether it's medicated assisted treatment, methadone, Suboxone, Vivitrol, and outpatient providers that are monitoring and caring for them and looking at the big picture, the health risks and everything. I do think we've made significant progress. We still have a long way to go, of course, but I do feel like we're very alert.
We're heading in the right direction. I
That's
guess
exactly right.
That's the way to look at it.
Correct.
So let me flip the coin a little bit
Sure.
and talk about the aspect of individuals who have long-term suffering pain, chronic pain. They seem to have become a victim of the pendulum swing.
I have to agree with that.
Okay.
I really do. I have to agree with that. I think there are people out there that absolutely need pain medication, but aren't able to access it because of the opiate crisis. And the pendulum has swung in the opposite direction, so I think we need to sort of try to start eking it back a little bit and making sure that the patients that need pain relief are getting appropriately treated, because that's a significant quality of life issue. And you don't want to, impose that on somebody else.
Okay. So now it's going to get to the meat of tonight's show.
Yes.
And you've come full circle. You've gone to school, you graduated with a degree in theater, went into clinical practice, and as a result of that clinical practice, you now are back into theater.
Yes, I know. It's thrilling. It's thrilling. I love it. I love being back in theater. I love being in the meat of the creative process.
So how did that all happen? I mean, just wake up one morning and go, I'm going to become a playwright.
Yes, that's exactly right. And poof. I had been working in the field for a long time. And I hadn't done any acting for a long time. So I was kind of feeling that creative itch, if you will. And I started writing something. I just started writing something. I started writing something. I wasn't really sure where it was going. It started out actually as more of kind of like a how-to survive nursing school guide for people like me going back. But I started writing, and then while I was working, I've always talked to my patients, of course. I'm a psych nurse practitioner. You have to talk with them and find out a little bit more. And in talking with my patients, I heard the most incredible stories, just simple stories, just day-to-days about how they live and how they think and what they're experiencing. Nothing major, nothing earth-shattering, or what. Of course, I would have to get the information as to how they ended up in my care. But just the day-to-days, and I started realizing that because addiction seems to be so fraught with stigma, and it's very divisive. It's an incredibly divisive topic, I find, that I thought, I wish that people could sit in my seat and talk to my patients for 5 minutes, and the opinions that they may have or the preconceived notions that they may have would completely dissipate, or at least get them thinking about how things work and how addiction takes hold and what the person who's suffering from the substance use disorder is actually like underneath. And
like you and I, in a lot of ways.
That's exactly right.
Assuming we're normal.
Yeah, that's a rather large assumption, Larry. So, because I would hear these stories, I started to think, if I could get somebody to sit down and listen to something that I have written, all my characters, I have to say, they're fictional characters, but they're based on the
real life stories
large
of
amount of patients that I've taken care of. And I've created these characters, I've created the dialogue, and wanted people to see what it's like just to sit down with somebody, because oftentimes, because of the stigma, they're just judged and written off. And I have a problem with that. And so it started to come together, and I thought, I want to educate people. I really want to educate people on what addiction looks like, just the 5 minutes in the day of the life of somebody who's suffering with substance use disorder. So I started to write a bunch of monologues, and I wanted to take it to colleges and medical schools and show it to healthcare providers, especially because healthcare providers who don't work in the field of addiction, because I find that they're not equipped to handle it when it's necessary. If they meet somebody who's got, substance use disorder, maybe they have an opiate issue or they have a drinking problem, they're not necessarily equipped to manage it from a holistic perspective, from head to toe, whole body. And so I wrote these monologues, but just as an aside, I wanted to let you know that I oftentimes have to defend my role as a nurse practitioner who works in the field of addiction to other providers, other healthcare providers. How can you work with those people? How can you, I don't know how you do that job.
The stigma.
That's exactly right. And I think you're a healthcare provider.
Yeah.
That surely can't be a regular, a serious question. And in fact, it is. It's a serious and a regular question. And so I created this play, which was originally titled Spiro Spero. Dum Spiro Spero in Greek means while I breathe, I hope. There's actually a character in the play named Spiro, and he's kind of the narrator. So I created these 7 characters, and I started to present this play as a one-woman show in various school settings, nursing conferences, regular healthcare provider conferences, and it was really well received because people were getting information from it that they weren't aware of before. I never thought of it like that.
In a different format.
Correct.
Something that resonated with them.
Yes, and that was also a big part of it too, Larry, because you can go to all the conferences you want, and they're wonderful and informative, and you get a lot from it. But there's a lack of an emotional connection to the information. So in order to create that connection, which may create dialogue, get people thinking and talking, because they've felt something, whether it's good, bad, positive or negative, it's created a feeling or as a result. So that's why I wrote this play, to present to providers.
So you have 7 different characters. And the name of the play is what now?
It's been renamed, it's called AddictShunned, but it's spelled as if it's AddictShunned. And people often pronounce it AddictShunned, and I don't correct them because it's kind of a play on words.
AddictShunned is a real-life experience for almost anybody, on both sides, whether you're the addict who is being shunned or you're the uneducated individual who has that stigma of, I can't be near that,
That's
or it's
right.
like you said, your own professional caregivers, why are you working with those people?
Right. So it's AddictShunned or AddictShunned, whichever you prefer. And I, on a whim, sent it to a friend of mine that I actually knew from college back in the day. He's a phenomenal director. He's the artistic director of Avenue Stage. And I just sent it to him and said, what are your thoughts on this? Give it a read. I wouldn't mind your feedback because he's a phenomenal playwright. His name is Michael O'Halloran, and he's an incredible, incredible playwright and an incredible director. And he took that on. He said, I would love to do it. If you'd let me do it, I would love to produce this show. And we have a phenomenal cast, 7 actors, 7 incredibly talented actors, each playing the various roles. And it's going up in July.
Which puts a face to the issue of the addiction that they might be suffering.
Correct.
Right.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I could not be happier with how it's going, being in the sort of the behind the scenes. I've written it. It's my baby. I've performed it. And now I'm just handing it over saying, take it and run with it. And he's doing a phenomenal job. He's doing a really great job. I'm looking forward to it. I've stayed away from rehearsals. A couple of rehearsals I've stayed away from because...
That's a smart move.
It is. It is. You know, as a playwright, you hand it over and let someone else's vision take over. So, but it's really difficult, I have to be honest.
So tell us a little bit about the theater in which it's going to be, and when is it showing?
It's showing, it opens on Thursday, July 12th. It runs the following 3 weekends, the 12th through the 28th, I believe. Thursday, Friday, Saturday for 3 weekends in a row.
Okay. So nine actual plays.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's at 8 p.m. It's at the BU Playwright Theatre on Comm Ave. And it's a nice, small, intimate space. It holds about 75 people.
Oh,
so it's
really?
nice. Yeah, so there's...
Very nice, compact.
Exactly.
Oh.
So the actors and their emotions and everything's going to be right out there for you to just reach out and touch. So
Not a bad seat in the house.
Exactly. And it's good. I like that it's being produced
And
in
that
this
theater,
space
if
right
I
now.
recall correctly, is probably just up past the Agganis Arena on Commonwealth Avenue.
That's right.
Around the 900 block, if I know my city of Boston.
Yes,
well enough.
perfect. Yes, I'll follow you in.
All right.
When you go. I'll follow you in.
All right. Fantastic.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. We have a couple of amazing, amazing women who are speaking the first weekend. Colleen Labelle, she's the director of the BMC office-based addiction treatment center. She's an incredible trailblazer in this field. She's just a mover and a shaker trying to get things moving and treated. And we also have Eilene Grayken, who herself is a theater producer in New York and London, and she's going to be speaking. She is the founder of the Grayken Center for Addiction Medicine at Boston Medical Center. Yes. So I'm very excited for you to come and see the show. I'm really looking forward to it.
I think we're excited.
I'm really looking forward to your opinion, quite frankly.
Well, opinions are what they're worth, Well,
They're
just my opinions.
Art is subjective.
Yeah. All right, that's
so
true.
I'll
That's
be
very
interested to see the feedback, to just hear the general feedback on the show.
And my thought just came back to me. When you were doing the one-woman show, if you would, is that something that you'd still be able to do or would be willing to do?
It is. It is for sure something I would still be able and willing to do. I'm going to expand the piece for production purposes, but for educational purposes, for sure, I would absolutely continue to bring it to schools and colleges. And
maybe we'll have you do it and we'll film you.
all right. Oh boy. Okay.
I'm going to put you on the spot on that one, and we'll get you out there. And
Please edit that part out that I said yes, I would.
Okay. All right. That's a maybe. All right.
For sure.
Yeah. So what do you see has been the most positive change in the addiction arena? I'm going back to what I want to say when Governor Deval Patrick back in 2013 declared it a public health crisis here in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts.
Right.
To me, that was the point where the pendulum began to shift on the stigma of addiction. We still have a long way to go, as you mentioned.
Unbelievable, yes.
What do you see has been the major changes, since that, I call it a very monumental moment, for us as a state?
I think major changes have been primarily talking about it, discussing it, not hiding it, not shaming it, getting it out there. We need to get information out there. We need to get information from healthcare providers, from patients. We need to get all that information out there in order to address it. And I think making sure that we're talking about it openly, honestly, communicating, especially to our younger kids, the new generation for sure, I think that's made a significant difference, because it's gotten people to move. You can't have a crisis and sit back and let it go. You have to start addressing it in some capacity. And even if it's not as swiftly as we'd hoped, it's still moving along nicely, and hopefully we can kind of build on that wave.
And in relationship to public education, it's been one of my pet peeves for the last 7 years, is that at what point in the education cycle of either the high school or even down to the middle school does this education awareness have to take place for these young men and women today?
The earlier the better. We're getting patients who are younger and younger. I only treat patients who are 18 up. But we're seeing significant increase in adolescence, teen use. The earlier the better. And I know that part of the problem, and I understand it as a parent, is what age is too early. And I don't want to start scaring my child, but I want to make sure that they're...
Well, you wouldn't tell your child to run without crossing the street before looking both ways.
That's true. That is true.
I mean, that's it's an analogy that's a good one,
right.
in my opinion.
It's true. It's true. Touche. Yeah. I'll give it to you.
So I mean, I'm seeing the conflict still between what I call the Department of Education here in the Commonwealth and the Department of Public Health.
Right.
In developing a curriculum, if you will, that can be used throughout all of the school systems throughout the Commonwealth versus the individual communities like Brockton, Holbrook, Easton, deciding to come up on what they believe is the right formula, for their community.
Yes. What age do you think?
6th grade and going up.
6th grade and up.
6th grade is my, absolutely. When you're going to hit in that middle school area, I think that's where you really got to start to at least open the dialogue.
For sure. I totally agree with that.
And maybe you open it, you had mentioned earlier, high preponderance of the patients you're seeing are getting addicted through the prescription meds that might be in the medicine cabinets of the grandparents or the
pill
parents,
parties,
pill parties, things of that nature,
But they're starting substances younger and younger. I ask my patients, what was the first substance you ever used and at what age? And it's typically around 12.
Wow.
It's typically around 12. That's my unofficial survey.
And that's about the 6th grade.
Yeah.
6th and 7th grade. That's incredible.
It is.
So we've got about 2 minutes left, I think, over there on my production. So what would you say to our audience out there in relationship to your clinical expertise and the phenomenal opportunity to see a play that you've put together?
I would say by all means, absolutely check out the show. If you go to avenuestage.org, you can buy tickets there for the show. It's a phenomenal cast, and it's a play that I think addresses what we need to recognize as the human side of substance use disorder. It's not anything that's significantly momentous, but it touches on various aspects of how people became addicted to substances. And each character in this has a story about how they became addicted without actually saying, well, I started doing this and I started doing that. It's just a snapshot. So,
will we have a follow-up that might involve the family and loved ones, or is this part of the performance as well?
Will we have a follow-up?
The impact on family and loved ones.
Another play?
Yeah, another play.
Yes, absolutely. It's actually a character I have on the back burner for sure. I have a bunch of characters that just aren't in this production right now. So,
well, I think this has been exciting. I am pleased to have you as a guest, and
I'm thrilled. Thank you.
I want to wish you first congratulations as a playwright.
Thank you so much.
We look forward to the show on July 12th, Thursday night, on the opening night, and keep doing the great things that you're doing out there in the addiction world, because education, communication is the key to success for what's happening with this epidemic.
Yes, and thank you for that. Thank you for doing everything that you do.
Well, thank you.
Education and communication.
On behalf of all of us here at A Deadly Silence, we hope you enjoyed this evening's show, and we'll see you again next week.